Okay, welcome back everyone. What we're going to take a look at here is the individual memorandum development assignment number 2. We'll start off by taking a look at the situation sheet. We'll do an analysis and then we'll actually go ahead and walk through a possible rewrite. So let's go ahead and proceed. Here again is the situation. Again, in a nutshell, what we have here is your boss, Stella Harris, asked you to attend a conference on workshop issues, and she wants you then to report back on the content of the conference as well as a recommendation. There are a couple of other things in here that she talked about, or the situation talks about, that we should address, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a bit. But first of all, let's go ahead and take a look at what we got to do. Remember, this is a memorandum, so we need to begin by looking at what is the purpose. And what I have here in the yellow are the details that we can use for a purpose. Again, she asked you to go to the conference and to report on the details. Next, we have to look at the consideration for the body. Well, the conference, as we know, was consisted of 3 specific topics that this Susan Sloan actually presented. Again, they were pre-screening job applicants, a good employee handbook, and finally recognizing what they call red flags. Now, associated with each of the 3 are details that you can use in the memorandum to describe what she meant by the 3 different topics. Next, there was also another thing about, or we had to then present, we had to present what our recommendation was. Now, as you can see here in the yellow, the recommendation is down there. Reasoning for it is also included, which will help to support your particular recommendation. Also, there is a mentioning, as you can see here in the yellow, about a management meeting that is coming up and that Stella may or may not want you to work on, possibly to prepare a report on the conference with your recommendation for this. So we need to include this also somewhere in our memorandum. Next we have another conference coming up. Now, this is something we want to kind of handle. It's really not quite related, or actually it's not really related to the conference or the summarization of the conference activities, but it's probably not bad to include it. However, since it doesn't really directly relate to the conference, we got to figure a different way of including this somehow into the memorandum. So let's go ahead here and look at the situation, particularly the summary and any considerations that might be there. First of all, our opening, well, the purpose we know is a summary of the Workplace Issues Conference. The body, again, we're going to have a couple different areas. The first is the presentation of the 3 topics. As you can see here, we have pre-screening job applicants. Next, we have the good employee handbook, a good employee handbook. And then finally, we have recognizing what we call red flag behaviors. We then want to go ahead and proceed, after we describe those 3, our recommendation, which we know is the pre-screening, and provide a brief explanation as to why. We can then move on into the meeting, since this would be a more logical order. We'll talk about the conference, our recommendation. Now, related, associated to that is this management meeting briefing, if you wish. Now we've got this issue about next Workplace Issues Conference. If we're going to put it into the body, which I don't know if we really should, but we could do it, that would be the very last thing in the body that we would talk about. My example will show a little bit different of how to handle that. We did talk about it in class, but let's go ahead and we'll take a look here in just a bit. Finally, we have a call for action, in the closing. Now, a lot of the papers that I reviewed use the management meeting as the call for action, asking her that if she wants you to present, you need to know by a certain date. Well, yes, that is a call for action, but it's not a call for action that would appear in the closing. The call for action would appear in the body when you talk about the meeting. In the closing, the call for action will be a call for action which relates to the macro view of the memorandum, not the management meeting, which is a micro view. Finally, we need to consider, well, do we have any carbon copies or courtesy copies? What about blind carbon courtesy copies? Do we have a PS, a postscript? How about attachments? How about enclosures? Well, to help you along, I did include some of these in my rewrite. So let's go ahead now and take a look at this rewrite. Well, our header is going to be pretty much standardized. We have the memorandum, we have date, to, from, and the subject. In this case, the subject I'm using is Summary of Workplace Issues Conference. The next thing we're going to talk about is the opening. And what I have here is the purpose of this memorandum is to provide you with a summary of the Workplace Issues Conference, February 26, 2018, which you instructed me to attend. The following describes 3 areas presented and my recommendations. It's an opening, tells why you're reading it and what is to follow. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the body. Now the first part of the body, as I mentioned before, is we're going to talk specifically about the 3 parts of the conference. And as you can see here, I start off with this conference conducted by Susan Sloan, presented the 3 considerations of pre-screening job applicants, in-depth employee handbooks, and red flag behaviors. I've introduced them. Now in the same order I'm going to briefly describe, and as you can see I've done that with bullet points. Now many of you use a chart. Yes, I think charts are very effective tools of presenting information. And I think what you need to do is also use them, I wouldn't say sparingly, but use them when they really are appropriate. Now, could I have put this into a chart? I guess so. Sure I could. But I think that because of the way it is, everything is short and simple. The bullets actually may be a little bit better way of presenting the material. So that's why I used bullets. Finally, I have down here in this bottom, or the second half here of this beginning, the opening, the body. My recommendation is pre-screening job applicants, as it is the most feasible for immediate implementation. Now I doubled up and I put in here about the management meeting. Since it has to do with my recommendation, I combined these 2 pieces. I could have made them separate, but it seemed more appropriate at this time to combine them. So I did include in that paragraph, if you want me to prepare a written recommendation for the March 10, 2018 management meeting, let me know by March 5, 2018. Again, remember, you got to put in the years. Next, I have here is my closing. I have Stella. If you require additional information concerning my attendance or content of this conference, please email me at, and I gave an email address, and a polite thank you at the end. Note that I did start it with Stella, comma, and you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's being polite. You can do that, or I could have just started if you require, but it's a little more friendly and definitely appropriate. So that pretty much rounds off the memorandum, the main portions, intro, body, and closing of the memorandum. Now, what about the missing pieces? Let's move on a little bit farther. Let's talk about a postscript, let's talk about an attachment, and let's talk about BCC or ACC. So, the PS I'm using here which is a postscript, which is an afterthought. I am using it here to talk about the next conference. Again, it very indirectly relates, but it still might be of value to present it. Not enough, in my opinion, to put up in the memo, but let's make it as the postscript itself. So I basically said, P.S. Susan Sloan will conduct another workplace issues conference on employee email monitoring in January 2019. A detailed brochure is attached for your review. Now, yes, the brochure information was not included in the situation, but for the purposes of demonstration, I'm mentioning that one is attached. Why? Because I want to show you how you use the attachment function. And as you can see here, I have attachment colon, and in my case, I actually named or gave a name for the specific attachment, and I have here Workplace Issues Conference Brochure. Finally, there really was no CC that I could come up with, but I did talk about with you probably the need to keep a hard copy or a working file of activities that you do. So I put down here a BCC, since no one's going to see it, Workplace Issues Conference File. Again, what I would do then is in that actual hard copy folder, place a copy of this brochure or memorandum, into the folder itself. Now, how does it look? This is how it will look in its entirety, nice and clean. As you can see, it fits well on the page. It's a lot of open space, significant open space. It looks somewhat inviting to read. All the details are there, and actually, again, this one includes all of the pieces that you should be considering as you prepare. That's it for now. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thanks. Have a great day.